All right, thank you so much for staying with the Monday Report. You're just in time for the town hall session. We'd like to hear your views at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Monday Report. Let's talk about what your expectations are for the 58th Madaraka Day celebrations. That's happening tomorrow in Kisumu. Joining me now is Honorable Farah Malim, former Deputy Speaker, National Assembly, and Koigi Wamwere, human rights activist, and also former Sumbukia Member of Parliament, is joining us live from Nakuru. We'll get to him in just a bit. Honorable Malim, what do you expect the President to address tomorrow? What is the most fundamental issues that the President has to touch on tomorrow?
Well, it's a question of whether the President is going to touch on what is important for the people, or whether he's going to touch on the current state of the pandemic and the economy and all those things, to say, well, we're not as bad as people get, or countries are getting, and we are unable to register the kind of growth that we expected because of the pandemic and other things. And then, of course, give some hopes on those who supported the BBI, without necessarily being categorical about whether we're going to. He might tell you his hopes, that he feels that there's sufficient grounds to expect a favorable ruling from the judiciary. But to say that we're going to win this case clearly is an indication that maybe the executive wants to put certain pressures on the judiciary. So you give hope to the people, but at the same time make sure you don't cross that fine line between the independence of the two bodies and, of course, a political speech, which is essentially a kind of an optimism. Basically, the bottom line is that the President has got to be optimistic. He has to show optimism to Kenyans for the future, because without that, I think there's so much pessimism in the country right now that it would be difficult to regurgitate the old things, because there are too many promises that were made over the last 8.5 years that never materialized. So you just can't say anything for the heck of it. You think that people are going to take it that no, they're used to having their dreams dashed, their hopes dashed. The trust between the government and the people also is completely eroded, because there are too many promises that were made that were never kept. So I think it's a tall order for him, but more than anything else, what I expect him to say is, look, it's not as bad as you think it is. It's worse in many parts of the world. We maintain our hopes, and we still. It's something about the economy that's going to give certain element of optimism to the people, even if it's not a very high measured optimism, but even that basic.
Are you concerned, though, when the President himself speaks about a court ruling that hasn't happened yet, and he says that with the legislators, well, he's part of the executive? Yes.
But no, you can't be categorical. But you can be hopeful. I mean, you talk to anybody right now, they'll either tell you, no, this is an open and shut case, and the Court of Appeal has absolutely, the grounds are too many, and to sustain one of them is sufficient to close the door on the BBI in its current state. That's of course for the people who never wanted the BBI, or the people who wanted the BBI but not in the form it is right now. It's massive. I mean, there are goodies in the BBI, but there are things that almost everybody has something that is not very comfortable with that package. In any case, how do you make so many amendments? You know what I mean? I mean, you're going to amend not less than 50, 60, maybe 70. More than 70, I think. I don't know the exact 74. Figure. 74?
Yes.
74 provisions of the Constitution itself. And you amend them in one sweep. It is a bit too much.
All right.
But a few of us, including myself, were happy with a couple of amendments. For example, we tried to get a pure presidential system, which is not working for this country. You see, right now, if you ask who is the cabinet minister for this, it's power without accountability. The system we had before, which was a hybrid system, where you have the executive, the president, elected popularly by the people, but at the same time, you had ministers who were accountable to the country and the people through the flow of the parliament, is no longer obtained now. So that is pretty much, it's not a good thing. So to change that is fair, in my opinion. And a number of 1 or 2 other provisions, but this 74 provisions of the Constitution itself is very tricky. I don't think any Kenyan is happy with those 74 amendments.
All right, let me bring in Honorable Koigi Wamwere on this. And Honorable Wamwere, what do you expect the president to address as a matter of urgency tomorrow?
Well, it's very difficult to say, but let me first, if you allow me, I would like to pass my condolences to the family of Kalembe Ndile, who passed away this last week. Otherwise, it's very difficult to know what the president will say tomorrow. But I guess whatever else he may be saying, I think he'll mention the matter of BBI and how much support himself and his brother are determined to give to the bill, to the BBI, to the BBI bill. He might mention other issues, but I think that is really what is most important in their minds, despite the fact that I would have expected him to spare some space for the question of COVID-19. Because given that we are in the 3rd wave of this coronavirus, I think it is very unfair to the country to give us less than most serious attention, given that it is the one danger that really faces this country, and it must be addressed by the top leadership seriously and not casually, as they happen to be doing right now. Why anybody would want, I mean, given what we have seen in India and Brazil, it shocks me when I see our leadership not giving the kind of attention that that COVID-19 deserves. As a matter of fact, I think that even the meeting in Kisumu should not be happening at this time at all, until we have flattened the curve and we are sure that this COVID-19 is under control.
Okay, let me bring in what the people of Kisumu expect from this Madaraka Day that's happening tomorrow.
Moving forward, the expectation is that the government can complete projects happening in Kisumu County, majorly touching on agriculture, irrigation, that are expected to bring money and flow of cash in the city. Kisumu's peers like Eldoret, Nakuru and Kisii, they are vibrant right now than Kisumu. It's because around them there's a good agricultural activity going on. So we are urging the national government to work in hand with the county government to especially finish the project that they are beginning, that will make Kisumu an investor's place of choice.
We need to see the economy growing in terms of business. Environment, we have the environment now. We want to see investors. We want to see the president appealing to investors that Kisumu is the place to be in terms of agriculture, in terms of business. We have beaches. We have a lot of things. So we are expecting, with the port coming in place, we expect that the president is going to allow us to see not just the port alone, but also the airport. We want to see the cargo coming also through the Kisumu International Airport and going through the Kisumu International Airport.
The economy has gone down. I do not know that it is because of the corona issue, but I want to believe that it is not because of the corona issue. If our president can tackle this very soberly, we Kenyans, we can be very, very much far. But I believe things are going down because the tycoons are the ones who are exploiting the young ones. And the economy has gone down because of the tycoons. So I expect Uhuru to speak about this one verbally and vividly about it. Let corruption be destroyed completely. Corruption is what is bringing Kenya down.
Ningeomba serikali kama ingetuwezesha itoe hii maneno ya kafyu. Watu wengine kama sisi wafanyabiashara hiyo masaa yenye wameweka ya kafyu. Kabla kafyu tulikuwa tunauza hii biashara yetu tulikuwa tunauza mpaka hii town mpaka saa 5. Saa hiyo wengine wanatoka hustle zao. Sasa vile walileta kafyu wengine tunafika kwa manyumba saa 2 ama saa 3. Sasa biashara nayo pia tuliona iko chini.
Na saa hii matarajio yangu ya kesho nataka rais aongee sana kuhusu mambo ya BBI ipite, na hiyo matunda yenye tumepata kwa devolution pia ipate through BBI, kwa sababu BBI italeta uhusiano mwema na tena italeta maendeleo, na devolution pia itaenda masinani vile ile constitution ya 2010. Sawa.
Honorable Malim, how do we achieve economic equity? Because there's this perception that a region only develops if you're politically correct. You can even hear the people themselves saying that we expect the projects to be complete on this side. We've been left behind for too long. How can a nation achieve economic equity that it doesn't matter who's at the helm?
We've never had that since independence. We've never, there's always been a state capture in this country right from the very first government. That's why parts of the country which enjoyed the fortune, or rather the accident of having one of their own being at the helm of the country, have much more development than the other parts of the country. I mean, you go to a place like Northeastern Province right now, and we have less than, is it about 160 kilometers of tarmac? And then you go to other places where the tarmac goes literally into the farms of people and the homes of the people. So the equity has never been there.
Yeah.
Look, this is one country where we have always had the right message, but that right message was never matched with the right actions. So we had the right plans, we had the right budget, we had the right vision, from Vision 2030 to all the very classical studies that we had, whether it's going to be the integrated multimodal kind of transportation, which was even going to include underground trains for Nairobi people. And that as far back as when I was a very young man, in less than 30, in the mid-80s, early 80s, we had that. I was in discussion groups on that.
Yeah.
And 30 years later, it's not there. So you look at Vision 2030, how much of it was implemented? I mean, we've always had good plans.
Yeah.
We've always had good talk by politicians. The best. I mean, when you look at it, it looks like a satire, some kind of a joke.
Yeah.
Look at when Jubilee was coming to power. What do you call tabs for Standard 1 children, stadiums, double-digit growth, everything. Mention it. This has always been there.
Yeah.
So, but to match that has never been there. And on the issue, right now we're trying to play a little bit of a catch-up for political convenience, because Luo Nyanza has been left out of the development of this country for a very long time.
Yeah.
Right from the very first government. And the only, so to speak, project which was of certain substance was the one that also brought a lot of misery when the late first president of this country was was opening the Russian hospital, what was called the Russian hospital, which essentially came in because you can understand those days, socialism, capitalism, communism, and the rest of it. And the vice president those days, Jomo Kenyatta, had a very, very good connections with the East. And the very function that was supposed to celebrate that turned out into tears, because that's when so many people were killed, when stones or rocks or whatever it is were thrown at the president then, either for whatever. But so the point I'm trying to tell you is that we've never had equity, and I don't think we're going to get equity in the foreseeable future. There'll always be a state capture in this country. It's been there for the period it's been there. And everybody is gunning very, very hard to hold that top office, both for personal reasons. Because when you look at also the wealth of the people who are there, and if you ask who is the richest people in the country, it's basically who is who in the helm of the country and in the politics of the country. So it both personal goodies and legacy, as well as community goodies and the region where you come from. So this has been this has been our life, our history.
It's our Achilles' heels. Let me bring in Honorable Koigi on this. Koigi, what would it take for us to achieve economic equity from where you stand?
Let me say that I think the answer to that question has always been under discussion in this country since we got our independence. You remember the debate of sessional paper number 10 of 1965?
Yes.
It was about how we were going to acquire equity in our economy.
Yes.
And the question then was raised whether the system with which to acquire equity would be socialism or would it be capitalism. Trevor, I don't know whether you remember the American ambassador in those days. He was called William Atwood. And he left behind a book called The Reds and the Blacks. And by the time he was leaving this country, people who were thought to lean to socialism, or at that time hardly was social democracy discussed. But if we really want equity, we have to choose the right system for it. We cannot go capitalist, and which encourages corruption and unequal development, inequality in fact, and expect to acquire equality. We have to be brave enough and say the only way to go in terms of enhancing equity in our economy and politics is the way of social democracy, which I happen to have seen in Scandinavia, and which I'm convinced will be the right answer for our question on inequality. You remember again when we were discussing sessional paper number 10, we ended up having a paper that was neither socialist nor African. And what we ended up with at the end of that debate was the Ndegwa report, which actually encouraged the civil servants to engage in corruption as a kind of pay for their service. I remember Kenyatta saying that whoever is called to fix a boundary is always given a reward. And that was supposed to encourage and excuse corruption. And once it started doing that, it has never stopped. So, to go back to your answer, to your question, to solve the question of corruption, inequality, poverty, we have to decide on which system we are going to live with, whether it's socio-democratic or whether it is socialism.
Okay.
Otherwise, we cannot eat our cake and have it.
Okay. It's interesting that you bring up sessional paper number 10 of 1965, because it is part of actually what featured in the president's speech. That is what happened in that is last year. That is, it was the 57th Madaraka Day speech. And this is part of what the president's speech was in 2020. That is, he started by saying that Kenya is a work in progress. As we reflect on progress made, we must not over-criticize ourselves. If we repeatedly feed our national psyche with negativity, we become a nation of angry people. That's one of the things the president was saying. And there's still more on this issue. We must reimagine Kenya. COVID-19 had just come into force, spread into Kenya at that particular point, and it forced us to reset our national values. And this is where that sessional paper number 10 of 1965 comes in, Africa's socialism and its application to planning in Kenya, which envisioned Kenya with an Africanized economy locally owned. This is part of the presidential speech last year. We'll see whether this year also contains part of it. And he further says that if the political architecture provided by a constitution cannot support the growth and progress of a nation, that constitution becomes a cancer to the body politic. So the solution, Honorable Farah, that the president is giving is not so much the sessional paper that we're talking about. He's talking about the political architecture provided by a constitution. If it doesn't support the growth and progress of a nation, then that constitution becomes a cancer to the body. Is our problem the constitution? Because,
no.
Yeah.
I think that's a very simplistic way of putting it. The constitutions are not cast in stone. They are living documents. So amending a constitution, a provincial constitutional provision, is an understandable thing. But you don't amend 74 or 80-something provisions of the constitution at one go. The American constitution has been there for over 200 years. They've only done 37 amendments. So 1 or 2 years is understandable if it's not serving us. But there has never been a national debate on that.
Yeah.
There has never been an intellectual engagement to see how much of it has been implemented, how much of it has been operationalized, and exactly where are the problems. You see what I mean? Exactly where are the problems.
Yeah.
Are we having a problem with the constitution because we don't have 70 additional seats with 60% or 70% of them going just to one community, ethnic community? You know, these are the kind of things.
Yeah.
And then when you talk about the sessional paper number 10 of 1965, it was the fundamental basis, it was the architecture of inequity in the country and inequality. Because the sessional paper number 10 itself was of intensification of government investments in the high potential areas as opposed to the low potential areas.
Yeah.
So in other words, at that time, the idea was that let's put more money into the coffee and the tea and these kind of things, where this country is an agricultural country. That's one thing.
Yeah.
It's the backbone of the economy. So let us go into instead of extensification, which means we were, instead of going out to the country and doing dryland agriculture and doing all sorts of things so that there is proper equity in the country, we say, no, let's bring all the resources to the regions that basically had a lot of potential agriculturally, particularly with the cash crops that were there to serve the tastes of the West. And we have a problem. We've had a problem right from independence. Because when you fight for your independence and you win your independence, you emancipate, you liberate yourself by cutting as much as possible loose with the colonial, master-servant kind of a syndrome.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how the so-called Asian tigers are where they are today. None of them maintained an economy that essentially is supposed to serve the tests, the tests of the former colonial masters or the West or the first world of the time. No, they were supposed to serve the interest of the African.
Yeah.
Or rather their own indigenous people out there, their own people. And that's why, I mean, Singapore, when you look at Singapore and Lee Kuan Yew and the kind of things he went through, where he basically told the Americans and the British and everybody else, he was from Oxford himself. And without, you know, top-class university, and was trained in there. But the thing that he got from there is that, look, I have to chart, it has to be a paradigm shift. I have to chart a new course for my people. Yeah. And he did that. And the same also with Hong Kong, the same with Malaysia, with Mahathir Mohamad much later. Yeah. The same also with even those other countries that did not have colonization but had a massive influence of them, like, you know, the Koreans, South Korea. So basically what we did ourselves is we never changed it. And Africanization here, indigenization of the economy itself, essentially meant sharing the booty or the looty among the political class that was there. Individuals having thousands upon thousands of tracts of land to themselves, individuals. Not spreading it out to the nation itself, and basically creating that basis to try and create a nation of people who can afford. Because if you don't create a nation of people who have got a certain wealth themselves that goes right across the board, they don't have a buying power. You see what I mean? That's why even today, 60 years or close to 60 years after independence, when somebody wants to tell you this is going to be a good business, he tells you, you know, this is a mzungu. You know, essentially, dropping in the name of the fact that there's a white man involved in that transaction itself tells you two things. One, there's money in it. And two, it tells you it's above board. You know what I mean? There is nothing hanky-panky or fishy to worry about. I mean, we've never sorted out our own psyche, the psychology of both the ruling class as well as the masses has never changed in this country. So I think it's going to take us a very long time. Look at Tanzania, Magufuli. He goes into that and Nyerere started it in the first place. One, promoting their own language. You see what I mean? Promoting Swahili as an alternative that time. That's Ujamaa, scientific socialism. They tried very hard. It might have not worked as well as they expected it to work, or it might have not had the time that was required, but it has created an element of equity within the mainstream. And when it threatened to go out of hand, under Jakaya Kikwete and Kappa and the rest of it, Magufuli comes in and then sends a very strong note. What is the country right now? It's been doing exceptionally well until, you know, sadly, the man has died. In 5.5 years, he was able to achieve a miracle. 6 airports, 6 new ports, rationalized what you call the mineral sector itself. And the country is rich, much richer than it's ever been. So we've never had, and Magufuli had less than equivalent of 1 million Kenya shillings in his own account when he was running for the presidency the first time. Now that is not the case in here now. We have corruption, which is at the centerpiece, right from the top, and it's national value. You respect somebody if somebody is wealthy in the country. You don't ask a question whether that person has stolen the wealth or he has made it legitimately. It's not a question of earning wealth in this country. It's making wealth. It's deals. And that's how it is all over. I mean, you find somebody who has been going barefoot to his primary school and secondary school 10 years or 15 years before that when he went through the university, never had an employment the way they do it themselves, and is in a house that is over 1 billion shillings. You get my point. And one family that owns thousands upon thousands of land, and that could not have never been achieved through a legitimate hard work in the sense it is. But now look at the flip side of it. If you study the history, the economic, what do you call, miracle of South Korea, through Park Chung-hee, that guy was a military guy. He came into power and he revolutionized the country. His daughter stole a little bit of money sometimes back and engaged in what was said. She's in jail. You see what I mean? She's in jail. The same thing also happens in Singapore. To send the strongest message to the nation itself and to everybody, from a third world to the first world, the first thing he did is that a minister was offered an opportunity by business people to have a holiday outside. When he came through the airport, he was in prison and put in prison. So the message goes straight. Yeah. Now tell me how many former ministers and ministers are in jail because of corruption in this country? No. So we can talk about this for forever. Yeah. We can have all the best plans. We can have one anti-corruption body after the other. Yeah. We can have all the visions, Vision 2030, 2050. We've also had visions before that, sessional papers all the time, but there's never honesty about it. Okay. So I don't think, and the only time we'll have a change in this country is when the people of this country, the masses of this country, are able to change the leadership in a fundamental manner. Okay. Bring in somebody who's there because of an ideological persuasion, not because he has the money or she has the money. Yeah. You see what I mean? Because that's why today you go to all the counties, 80% of them, they're not service deliveries, and nobody's going to jail. People who are known, never had a qualification, never had a university degrees, became governors. And when you take them to court, the court is corrupt. The Supreme Court is literally one of the most corrupt institutions because the few cases, landmark cases that they brought about, we've seen what they did. And then you go all the way down there. So there is no arm of the government that is clean. There is nobody who can cast, like you remember the proverbial Bible thing where let those ones who have not seen cast the first stone. Yeah. Who can cast the first stone, if I may ask you? Okay. Look at the opposition leaders.
Fair point.
Everybody.
Okay, I have to take a quick break here on the Monday Report. When I come back, I'll sample some of your views that are coming through and also finish through the 2020 presidential speech. We're expecting the 2021 presidential speech tomorrow, but part of this is most likely going to feature in the speech tomorrow. We'll be back in just a bit.